Actually relatively straightforward to see. They're mainly active particularly at dawn and dusk, but they can be out during the middle of the day. And what you watch for, they're quite big animals, and so you can spot them fairly easy when they're swimming. And they tend to swim for about 10 metres or so, then dive, come back up about another 10 metres on. So they're actually pretty easy to spot.
What sort of features do they have?
Unfortunately, a lot of people hear the word rat and immediately think that these are a really unattractive species because we associate brown rats and black rats with being pests. But these are a genuine native animal. They've been here in one form or another for between 5 and 10 million years. They are an extremely attractive animal. They have many otter-like features. They have these fabulous set of whiskers. They're a quite biggish animal, about 1.5 kilos in weight for the males. They have a lovely brownish, golden brown fur and quite a long, thick tail, webbed feet, and so they really are otter-like. And we think they're an extremely attractive species that deserves a lot more attention and support than they normally get.
Why do you want people to spot these animals?
Look, they're a very poorly understood species. They're a very difficult animal to study in the wild. They're very difficult to do trapping surveys with. This is a very smart animal. And when researchers have tried to do surveys using traps, the water rats just outfox them in a way. And
How do they do that?
Well, they're very smart, and consequently, if you set traps for them, they pretty much work out that something weird's going on and avoid the traps. And so even in areas where there's a lot of water rats, researchers get a very low success rate in actually catching the animals and working out their numbers. So consequently, because of that, we don't know much about them. We still don't know a lot about their biology. We don't know how well they're doing in the wild. Certainly there's a lot of evidence that their numbers have declined in many places, particularly during the drought that was on a few years ago. Numbers crashed in many places, and in many parts of what we consider their traditional habitat have changed. For example, they used to do very well in the irrigation districts around Victoria, but because many of the channels have been modified, less habitat for water rats. So there are species which we think needs a bit of attention to make certain that it's not running into too many difficulties. And so that's why this particular study is very important to try and get a handle on how well the species is doing.
We're sitting by the Tambo at the moment in Bruthen. Do you think the water rat would like this waterhole over here?
Yeah, yes, the water rats occur pretty much in most of our waterways in Gippsland. And that's why we think people throughout the region have got a fairly good chance of observing them, and when they do see them, we really would like them to pass on the details to us, because that will help us get a much better understanding of how the species is doing. We're particularly interested in how the species is doing in the Gippsland lakes. Now, the water rat used to be thought of as predominantly a species that was a freshwater species. In other words, it occurred in the same sort of areas as the platypus. But what we've now recognised as time has gone on is that they are a species that's doing quite well in saltwater and brackish conditions as well. But that's never really been studied. We've never nobody's ever been able to really look at how a population is doing in saltwater conditions. The Gippsland Lakes provides us with an excellent opportunity to see how the water rats are doing in that sort of environment. And that's why it's a first of its kind, this study, and therefore that's why we really hope people will get behind it.
When people spot one of these water rats, what should they look out for? Are they recording what they're doing? Are they recording where they see them, when they see them? Well,
look, we're particularly interested in when and where they see them. Sightings information really starts to build up a picture of where the populations are strongest, and starts to tell us about what sort of habitat they like. And particularly, though, if they see interesting behaviour, we're, again, very interested to know those sort of details. One of the things with water rats is that you can tell what they're eating up to a certain extent, both by watching them directly, observing what they're actually munching on, but at the same time they often have favourite places they go to feed, and they leave fragments of food around after scraps of food that they haven't consumed. And so if people observe that and see what sort of things, whether it's fish or whether it's invertebrates or whatever, that again is all information that helps us. And any interesting information. This is a very unusual species in many respects. It's a very adaptable species. It's a ferocious hunter in some regards. It takes on things much bigger than itself in terms of preying on them.
What sort of animals does it take on?
Well, interestingly, there have been occasions when water rats have been known to take on quite large bird species. They've actually occasionally dragged ducks underwater and killed ducks. But the other interesting thing about them in terms of their feeding habitats is they're one of the few species in Queensland which has worked out how to feed on cane toads. They've worked out that if you flip the cane toads over and you can eat them from the belly upwards, you can avoid the poison in the cane toads. And so they're very, very smart animals.